Imagine waiting over 2 decades to fulfill a musical dream sparked by a cheesy cult classic. Now that's a passion that resonates deeply with anyone who's ever obsessed over a forgotten gem. But here's where it gets controversial. Is reviving old B-movie scores through modern remakes a brilliant homage, or just another way to dilute the raw, low-budget charm that made them cult favorites in the first place? Back in May 2024, I found myself in the backstage area at the Fonda Theater in Los Angeles, surrounded by a handful of my all-time favorite musicians, including the legendary Slash. We were gearing up to debut my rock concept album, The Singularity, for the very first time. As the walls vibrated from the booming bass of our warm-up act, Slash casually mentioned he'd just come back from Vancouver, where he'd been overseeing the production of a movie. "What's the flick about?" I inquired, tying my shoelaces with a hint of curiosity. "We've secured the rights to reboot an 80s cult movie called Deathstalker," he replied. That name hit me like a thunderbolt. Floods of memories rushed in. Those endless nights in my youth, huddled with buddies watching terrible yet thrilling cult films, all set to the pounding drum machines and synth tunes from Chuck Cirino's unforgettable score for Deathstalker II. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Slash, how about we craft a theme song for your movie by drawing from the original Deathstalker II music?" He looked shocked, then grinned broadly. My obsession with cult movies ignited during high school. Back then, my pals and I would hit the local video rental shop every Friday, lugging home stacks of VHS tapes and later DVDs, drawn in by eye-catching artwork and promises of wild escapades lasting just 90 minutes of pure entertainment. For beginners curious about cult films, think of them as movies that don't fit the mainstream mold. They're often quirky, low-budget, and beloved by niche fans for their over-the-top style rather than polished production. Some cult classics actually launched the careers of big names like Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead, Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, Trey Parker's Cannibal the Musical, Joe Dante's Piranha and its follow-up, Piranha 2, The Spawning with Danny Elfman's score, and Forbidden Zone. But then there are the true cult treasures, stuff like Flash Gordon, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, American Cyborg, Steel Warrior, Robot Jocks, Highlander 2, The Quickening, Fortress, Moron movies, and anything from Troma Entertainment, such as Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. The sword and sorcery genre was a go-to for hilarious, budget-friendly fun, with films like The Beastmaster, The Barbarians, and of course, the Deathstalker trilogy. I still adore cult flicks today. Just check out my recent guest spot on Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst review series for proof. One humid summer night in the Pacific Northwest, when I was roughly 19, my friends and I rented the entire Deathstalker quartet for a non-stop marathon. The VHS sleeves, inspired by Frank Frazetta's artwork, teased heroic warriors saving scantily clad heroines from colossal beasts. Like many low-budget films from that time, they fell short of those grandiose promises. But Deathstalker II stood out with its witty, self-deprecating humor. Chuck Cirino's soundtrack was instantly addictive. I grabbed a cheap Casio keyboard and jammed along during my first watch, something I've never done before or since. Even though it was all synth-based, I sensed a longing for a grand orchestral performance. When I returned to college in Los Angeles that autumn, I arranged my own orchestral version, dreaming of a massive cinematic spectacle. With my limited skills and tech back then, it came out even more synthetic and goofy than Chuck's original. I burned it onto a CD and tucked it away, both literally and figuratively, as a shelved project. Deep down, though, I yearned to hear it brought to life by a real orchestra. Fast forward a couple of years. After my Battlestar Galactica soundtrack dropped, I attended a composer signing at the spooky bookstore Dark Delicacies. Scanning the list of seasoned pros, one name jumped out, Chuck Cirino. That synth horn riff from Deathstalker II flooded my thoughts. Later that day, I nervously handed Chuck a CD of my take on his tune. He seemed astonished that a newcomer like me knew his work so intimately. That moment let me finally dig into the mystery. Who is Chuck Cirino, And how did he whip up such a catchy score for this bargain bin B-movie? Chuck grew up in the vibrant, swinging 60s, mesmerized by Neil Hefti's Batman theme, John Barry's sweeping Born Free, and the dramatic twangs of Ennio Morricone, Bruno Nicolai, and Carlo Rustichelli's spaghetti western soundtracks. His dad was a jazz player in Miami Beach clubs, so Chuck mimicked him on organ, piano, trombone, and whatever else he could touch. As a young man, he moved to Southern California and connected with up-and-coming filmmaker Jim Wynorski. Long before Deathstalker, when Jim wasn't directing yet, a bunch of us would sneak into the Culver Theater in Culver City. It was this trashy, six-screen spot, Chuck reminisced recently. We'd bribe the projectionist with booze to slip in the side door every Friday for a few years, catching 6 B-flicks. Pre-VHS era, so it was our only shot at those edgy European sword and sorcery raunch fests. We soaked up tons of weird genre stuff. Chuck broke into films directing cult-favorite ads like the Fred R. Rated for Federated spot with radio icon Shadow Stevens. Jim Wynorski landed a gig with producer Roger Corman, hitting it big with Chopping Mall. Corman then handed Jim the reins for Deathstalker II, Corman's cheeky nod to Conan the Barbarian. In 1986, Jim rang Chuck needing a score for the sequel, even though shooting hadn't started. No footage yet, Chuck laughed. Jim just listed cues. Make one like this, another like that. Main theme plus 6 variations. Basically a shopping list. Drawing from spaghetti western vibes, Chuck infused his music with a signature screaming war cry. He used a Prophet 2000 sampler, cutting edge back then, to experiment. It's me howling ah ah into a mic, blended with a hawk sound effect, he explained. Paired with a Yamaha DX7, Lindrum and Seal synth, he composed while juggling commercial shoots. I'd score all night, edit afternoons, film mornings, youthful stamina, he noted. On day 5, Jim called urgently. Master tape ready now. Chuck handed it over. Jim dashed to catch a flight to Argentina for shooting and mixing. After 5 grueling nights, Deathstalker II vanished from his radar. Or so he thought. The movie released a year later and built a devoted fanbase. Chuck was floored that his quickie score resonated globally. It feels like my most significant work, he said humbly. Not as iconic as the themes I idolized, but it's cherished, and that's a blessing. Over 30 years, after scoring nearly 100 films like Chopping Mall, Ghoulies 4, and The Return of Swamp Thing, fans still rave about Deathstalker II's music. And this is the part most people miss. In 2024, one such fan, me, in that Fonda green room pitched to Slash, let's build a theme for your remake using Deathstalker II's original tunes. I caught Deathstalker II on release while working at Tower Video in Hollywood, Slash shared. It was a blast, especially that anthemic theme. I rewatched the first one too. Fun, though no killer song. I'd screen them during my late shifts. Jump to now. Our partners got a solid script for a reboot, worth pursuing. I craved remaking that Deathstalker II tune. Surprised you knew it so deeply, it's niche. But you nailed it note for note, and even knew Chuck. It proved how potent that melody is. Post-launch of The Singularity, a 5-year labor of love, my mind and body were wiped out. Yet reworking Chuck's score with Slash energized me. I dove into my studio, starting with a full symphonic overhaul, the dream I'd nursed since college. No longer a novice with dorm gear, my mid-40s expertise from epics like God of War and The Lord of the Rings of Power, shone through. Picture blazing French horns in their highest notes, lush strings, and a choral choir adding depth. I didn't stop at reorchestration. I evolved it into a proper theme song with lyrics. Sketching bass, guitar, drums, I envisioned my rock album's band performing. I brought in my brother Bear McCreary, co-producer of The Singularity, for lyrics and vocals. I adore his voice, perfect vibe for this, Chuck praised. Epic already. While Brendan penned words, we jammed on hard rock riffs for drive. The bridge riff hit me instantly from the theme, Slash said. Played it on acoustic and sent it over in a minute. Magic moments. After days tinkering, I emailed a demo to Slash and Brendan, fusing everything. We instantly saw Chuck's tune reborn as a rock anthem. First demo was epic, Slash agreed. We had gold. One snag, capturing Chuck's 80s synth flair. I contacted him, explaining our plan, and seeking his synth recreation. When you said full orchestra, I couldn't fathom it. I've never had that for my scores, Chuck recalled. Unheard of a composer revisiting a decades-old piece in a new form. On my demo, I teared up. He eagerly joined, reviving synths with modern tools including those Hawk Scream samples. Those files felt like unearthed 80s relics. His layers completed the masterpiece. Deathstalker was ready for recording. September 19th, 20th, 2024. We tracked live symphony in Eastern Europe. Listening from LA, I shivered as nearly 100 musicians played Chuck's melody. My long-held vision realized. The first orchestral take of Deathstalker II ever. Ecstatic. I shared with Slash, Brendan, and Chuck. Next day at Henson Studios on La Brea, I arrived with my hurdy-gurdy. Slash followed, and we began. Chuck, there first, greeted the band and engineer Ben Sedano. His first meet with everyone beyond me. Seeing everyone collaborate on my old music. Incredible, Chuck beamed. A career high. B-movie composers rarely get epics. Throughout, Slash showed film clips. I admired director Steven Kostanski's practical effects mastery. But the finished movie overwhelmed me. Visuals, cast, mood, and music by Blitz Berlin nailed it. Our credit song? Goosebumps. What you've achieved with Deathstalker II is enormously grand, Chuck thanked. It shows deep love for the music. I'm indebted to Slash for including me in his Deathstalker revival. Teaming with him, Brendan, Chuck, and Pros gave me the 20-plus years awaited chance to reinvent Cirino's theme. It began that summer at 19, keyboard in hand during our marathon. Hopefully, a new teen somewhere will see this remake, hear our tune, and embark on their adventure. But here's where it gets controversial. Do these reboots honor the original cult spirit, or do they risk over-polishing the very imperfections that made them endearing? And this is the part most people miss. Could this collaboration set a precedent for reviving forgotten B-movie scores? Or is it a one-off fluke? What do you think? Should we celebrate these musical resurrections, or are we diluting nostalgia? Agree or disagree? Share your thoughts in the comments. Look for an extended version of this post soon at www.bearmccreary.com.